Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. And another one in terms of viewer comments. This one, it's what you've had to say about the potential and the path towards the UK at some point, maybe in the next 10 years, may not be for a generation, may not be for 2 generations, but at some point rejoining the EU. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So I've tried to, as always, pick a representative sample. First one, I've had this one in the past actually, but it's saying, having read many of the comments here, we are not welcome. The likelihood is we won't be able to go back. To be honest, with the attitude of our government and some of our countrymen, I don't blame them. However, please don't tar us all with the same expletive deleted brush. Many of us consider ourselves as British Europeans. Absolutely, indeed. But here is the rub. So what this will be based on is various comments, which I've seen myself, and I frequently see myself. People in the EU are just sick of this British attitude. Fair enough. But there's a couple of things to this in terms of my response. First of all, the politicians are a bit more pragmatic than that. I don't think that would be a major barrier. But also you need to sort of think, it's a bit like in Back to the Future, isn't it? You've sort of got to think fourth dimensionally. At the moment, you're looking at the way Britain's behaving. That is the British government and the people who are being given the megaphone for Britain, who do not represent Britain. But, you know, they are what they are. Now, obviously, such a government is not going to seek to rejoin the EU. No one is suggesting, I am certainly not suggesting, that Boris Johnson and his ilk, no matter how badly Brexit goes, will seek to rejoin the EU. That is not what I'm suggesting. What I am suggesting is a future government. Now, at the point at which we would want to rejoin the EU, it would mean several things. First of all, we would have a much more intelligent government in place. Secondly, we'd have a much larger proportion of the population fully involved in wanting to rejoin the EU. That means all those loudmouths that currently have the megaphone would be told to sit down and shut up. At which point, you know, the more moderate voices will take over the megaphone. At which point we will not come across as the same pig-headed, arrogant country that at the moment we are doing. So that's the way I would go along with that. As this person says, there are many of us who are very proud to be British Europeans, and still, I mean, we're still Europeans, come what may, because just because we're not members of the EU anymore, we haven't attached an outboard motor to the island and sailed off to the Pacific or anything like that. So yeah, that's what I would say to that one. You've got to sort of consider at the time at which the political situation would mean that Britain would want to rejoin the EU. And I say Britain because I do have to fear that by the time it comes to that, I think Ireland will have reunified, because I can see that happening in the next 10 years, regardless of whether Brexit had happened or not. So it may well just be Britain. Hopefully Britain. Hopefully not just a bit of Britain. Hopefully Britain. But there we go. Yeah, it'll be a different country, and hopefully if we can get the electoral reform needed to facilitate this as well, then again the people who will have control of the narrative will be more representative of the country. At the moment, polls are placing it as 57% of people in this country want back in the EU. That is a number that has been rising over the past few years. It's a number that will only get bigger. It's a bit like, you know, the longer this Brexit government carries on exposing just how insane they are, the more support for the opposite will gain traction. Just as you have in Scotland. You know, the support for independence, unfortunately, is on the increase. I understand why. Ironically, Boris Johnson went to Scotland to try and turn it back the other way. He said, I'm going to go out and I'm going to show the strength of the union. So he went to Scotland, and then support for independence jumped up by 3%. Thanks, Boris. Nice one. Well done. And the same thing's happening with Brexit. The longer this Brexit shower in charge of the country, the more people are turning around and going, Brexit's not really a terribly good idea, is it? Is it? And it will, again, only increase. Anyway, there we go. Next one, it says, wow, all these comments and discussions about what conditions or membership models are acceptable to UK or parts of it. It shows clearly that UK doesn't belong to the EU. The notion to negotiate is a misunderstanding in itself. The EU membership is not self-service or no self-service buffet, sorry, and UK won't get a deal after leaving without a deal. Well, a few things in there. EU membership is certainly not a self-service buffet, admittedly, but also you say that the notion to negotiate is a misunderstanding. No, it's not. EU membership is always negotiated, always. That is why, I mean, apart from the fact that is why there is a period of negotiation for anyone who joins, but that is also why different EU member states have different membership rules. You know, some states earned themselves little exceptions, including the UK. When we were members, we had a number of little exceptions and vetoes that did not apply to everyone. There's a few countries that have got that, and it's not always the biggest, most powerful either. Poland got itself a few. You can absolutely negotiate. As long as you're willing to go along with the core aims and you don't do anything to weaken the EU, then in actual fact you can absolutely negotiate, membership. Absolutely. But I will take the last point. It says, and the UK won't get a deal after leaving without a deal. Now, if of course, and I'm going to do another video sort of on this later today, hopefully. So if we did leave without a deal, that doesn't really provide much of a relationship to be renegotiating entry back again. But again, fourth dimensionally, if we ever got to a point where we, as a country, and we had a government that was going to the EU going, do you know what? Those idiots were idiots. We'd like to rejoin, please. Obviously, we would not do so from a position of not having a deal. The first thing we would do is make sure that we had a much closer relationship. The first job of any sensible, moderate government to regain power would be closer alignment with the EU. So by the time this happened, inevitably we would have a much better working relationship with the EU, and we would have, we'd be moving towards much closer alignment anyway, which we would need to do in order to reapply. Next one is here. I have to put two up at once actually here. This is two separate comments. It says, I could see harmonisation between the UK and the EU first. And then someone saying, wouldn't a more realistic objective be to rejoin the single market a la Norway? So I'll take that second one first, although they're both very, very much related. It's basically saying you wouldn't go straight for rejoining. Surely what you'd do is, well, the first person calls it harmonisation. The second person calls it, rejoining the single market like Norway. It's the same thing, isn't it, really? Yes and no. Obviously, you'd want to move towards that as part of rejoining. But here's the situation. So let's say, we already know we have a country where the majority would want to be part of the EU. And that number will only go up. So if ever we had a situation where Parliament was representative of people, in other words, we had proportional representation in our general elections, then that means the bulk of Parliament would be of that mind as well. It's like they would want to rejoin the EU in all haste. So they wouldn't settle, they wouldn't ever go, oh, can we get a Norway-style deal and then we'll see what happens then. They would go, no, we'll, of course, harmonise. We'll move towards this harmonisation as part of the steps towards rejoining. No one's suggesting at the moment, we could rejoin quite quickly. Obviously, by the time we get a sensible government back, Boris Johnson will have done all sorts of damage, and maybe his successor will have done even more damage as well. And there will be work to move us back into alignment, in fact, further into alignment, because as many people have pointed out, our system of democracy at the moment is laughable. It's archaic. But again, like I say, fourth dimensional thinking, by the time we're in a position politically to want to rejoin the EU, surely we would have proportional representation. That's got to be the first step. That actually has to be the first step on our journey back to the EU. Proportional representation, close alignment with the EU, rejoin the EU. But all part of the same journey. I wouldn't think of it as, oh, we should get proportional representation first and then see. And I'd see it as part of a plan. Proportional representation, alignment with the EU, closer alignment with the EU, which you could call a Norway-style arrangement if you wanted, because hopefully that's what it would be like. Rejoin the EU, but not individual things where you get used to it and then you go, oh, should we do the next bit? Yeah, why not? Just actually part of a plan. Next one, it says, it would also be interesting to see if it could work at all. if Scotland gained independence and joined the EU, and if Northern Ireland voted for reunification with Republican Ireland and joined the EU. I mean, with Northern Ireland, surely they're maintaining the customs union with the EU anyway. Really, if Ireland reunified, and I would say when, because I think it's inevitable at some point, then surely in terms of being part of the EU again, I don't see any issue with that at all, because it would already be aligned. The only issue would be is in switching from British laws to Irish laws. And the main sticking, and I did reply to this person actually, in the main sticking point with Ireland, with Northern Ireland, in terms of reunification, as I see it, there might be some other things I'm not thinking about, but immediately the number one sticking point for me would be Stormont. Because here is the thing, of course. Republicans wouldn't really feel the need for Stormont anymore, because it would all be part of a united Ireland. You just revert to having the same system of government throughout the rest of Ireland. Whereas, and that's not to say there is no devolution, so to speak, in Ireland, but there'd be no need for, there isn't the equivalent of Stormont all over the country. Whereas the Unionists would, of course, go, no, we want to keep Stormont. Thank you very much. We'd still, they would still seek to make Northern Ireland different somehow to the rest of Ireland. So that will be a battle. That will be the actual battle. I really don't see it being an issue in terms of Northern Ireland suddenly becoming part of the EU again, because in reality, it's not really going to leave. It's not going to be a member of the EU, of course, because it's part of the UK, but it's also going to remain in the customs union and all the rest of it. And it will naturally, because of the wedge that Boris Johnson is placing between Northern Ireland and the rest of Britain, and Britain, I should say, then it's going to align itself very strongly with the EU anyway. That's not an issue. Next one, it says, there could even be a referendum. I do expect the EU to answer any wish to rejoin by the UK with a demand for a referendum that delivers a clear, not a close 52 to 48 result of the UK voters to wish to rejoin. I'll take that point first because there's a few bits in here. That could well be true, yes. It could well be the case. I absolutely agree, because just to explain why that would be for some people. So if we had another referendum and it was narrowly in favour of rejoining, then the EU may fear that the resulting negotiations to rejoin could get bogged down in the same sort of nonsense that took place during the Article 50 negotiations and is now taking place in the post, Article 50 negotiations. They won't want that. You're absolutely correct. They won't want that. So that could well be. I'm not saying it definitely would be a demand. I could believe it would be a demand. Yes, I believe that they would go, look, we're not entertaining the notion unless people are really in favour of this. Now, what you call really in favour of it, I don't know. 60-40, is that good enough? I would hopefully that be good enough. And I think you'd get that now. I think you would certainly get it then. Because remember, again, for us, and fourth dimensionally, I'm going to have to keep saying it, Back to the Future, coming to the rescue again. When you have to sort of look that far ahead, then politically, for any government to find it worth its time to even do this, because like someone earlier said, even a very pro-EU government, which would be anything apart from the Conservatives, quite frankly, would at least want closer harmonisation, would at least go for the Norway deal. For it to be worth their effort actively going to rejoin, which is going to take an awful lot of parliamentary time and an awful lot of civil service time when they've also got to be clearing up the mess that the Tories will have left, they would want, in that situation, they would want a lot of public support behind them. So, again, it's one of these things that although in theory it could be demand of the EU, I think it would just be automatic anyway. For our government to do this, they would want overwhelming public backing as well. Then it says, that is, if the other countries in the EU even want to allow the UK to rejoin, I don't see that to be impossible. After all, there are a lot of pragmatic reasons for the UK to be allowed to rejoin, yet there will be a lot of strings attached to it. My guess would be resounding support in public opinion before any rejoining can even be considered from the EU side of things. But like I said, I think it's one of these things, like everyone's trying to think of Britain as it is now. Britain as it is now would never seek to rejoin the EU. By definition, if we did seek to rejoin the EU, it would be a different Britain. Or at least it would be different voices speaking for Britain. That bloody fly again. Last one says, unfortunately, I think that many people will blame the EU for the misery that will happen for leaving. Illogical, but people are extremely stupid. A lot of people are stupid, yes. But again, I don't think so. At the moment, even though Boris Johnson is doing his level best to blame the EU for everything, like I said, latest poll, 59% of people in this country want to rejoin the EU. And that number is only going to go higher. Now, there will always be a core. I'm not going to suggest it's going to end up at 90% and it's only going to be like 10% will be, you know, anti-EU. I mean, let's face facts. Even look at actual countries in the EU. You know, you've always got some opposition to it, a decent core of opposition to it. That will always remain. What matters is not so much, you know, whether or not there will be people blaming the EU. It's how many of them and how loud they are. The fewer they are, the smaller their voice inevitably becomes, even if they have the megaphone still, you know, thanks to the likes of the Daily Mail and so on. So, you know, I don't think that the bulk of people will at all blame the EU. They will blame the government, and I hope that will be reflected in the next general election. Yes, I know they got away with it in this general election, but again, that's two reasons. One, first past the post, because they did not get a majority of votes. Two, the fact that they're still selling this dream, and it is a dream, it's a fantasy. Whereas, after, well, by the time the next general election comes around, Brexit will be a reality. It will be a reality. And like I said, you know, it doesn't matter who you blame. There comes a point where you just look at the government and say, okay, it doesn't matter who you're blaming, what are you going to do about it? And we've seen this with COVID. We have seen this with COVID. The government are blaming everyone for what's happened in this country with COVID, but themselves. They've absolutely blamed everyone. Are the public falling for it? Some are, most are not. You know, the government has lost credibility. Every time there's been a major problem in the last 6 months, you know, in the opinion polls, the government are losing. The Conservative Party losing. Boris Johnson personally is losing out. So people, you know, there comes a point where it doesn't matter who you blame. You know, COVID is showing us people want to know to say to the government, what are you going to do about it then? And if they haven't got anything to do about it, if they don't do anything about it, people go, well, we'll give someone else a chance then if you can't. They say they can. Labour say they can deal with it. We'll give them the job next time. They can have the gig. But anyway, those are your thoughts there. Those are my thoughts added on to them. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.